The first time Nora Whitfield saw Caleb Harrow, he was sitting alone in the rain with a bouquet of dying wildflowers in his lap and a revolver hanging low against his right thigh. The train had already left. Its black smoke still dragged across the gray Kansas sky. The iron rails hummed beneath the platform boards. Yet Caleb did not move. He kept watching the eastbound track where it curved around a low ridge and vanished. Nora stood behind the ticket window with one hand resting on the cash drawer. She had worked at Red Willow Station for 6 days, long enough to know the regular freight hands, the traveling drummers, the local boys who tried to sneak onto the platform without paying the 5-cent fee. It was not long enough to understand why a rancher would sit through cold rain after every passenger was gone. The station master, Mr. Bell, noticed where she was looking. "Do not ask him." Nora turned. "Ask him what?" "Anything about Fridays." That was all he offered. Caleb came again the next Friday at precisely 8 minutes before 4. This time the sky was clear. He tied a chestnut gelding beside the loading shed. He entered the station and placed a nickel on the counter. One platform ticket. He was perhaps 45. He was broad through the shoulders with a face darkened by weather and a pale scar cutting through his left eyebrow. His coat was clean but worn. His black hat had been brushed carefully. Beneath it, iron gray hair showed at his temples. Nora handed him the ticket. He thanked her without meeting her eyes. Then he walked outside and sat on the second bench from the eastern end of the platform. At 4:12, the eastbound locomotive came roaring into Red Willow. Steam rolled between the wheels. Coal smoke drifted under the roof. 4 passengers stepped down. A traveling salesman, a soldier with one arm, a woman holding the hands of 2 small girls. Caleb studied every face. When the conductor called for boarding, he remained seated. The train pulled away. He watched the empty track for several minutes. Then he rose and rode south. The 3rd Friday, he brought wildflowers. The 4th Friday, he came with mud on his boots and dried blood on one sleeve. Nora watched him buy the same ticket, sit on the same bench, wait for the same train. This time a stranger watched him too. The stranger stood near the freight office in a tan duster and smoked a thin cigar. He had arrived on the noon train and asked no questions about lodging. He carried no luggage except a narrow leather case. When Caleb sat down, the stranger turned just enough to keep him in sight. Nora felt something tighten behind her ribs. She leaned toward Mr. Bell. "Who is that man?" The station master glanced through the window. His expression changed. "I do not know." Nora looked at him. "You do." Mr. Bell lowered his voice. "Keep your attention on the tickets." Outside, Caleb seemed unaware of the stranger. He placed the wildflowers beside him and watched the eastbound arrive. No one he recognized stepped down. As the train departed, the stranger crushed his cigar under one boot and walked away without speaking. Caleb waited until the smoke cleared. Then he reached inside his coat and removed a folded piece of paper. From the window, Nora could not see what it was. She could only see that he held it carefully as though it might break. A gust of wind caught one corner. For an instant, the paper opened. Nora saw a faded railroad stamp and a short length of blue thread tied through a punched hole. Caleb folded it quickly and returned it to his coat. That evening, after the station closed, Nora found the crushed cigar beside the freight office. Under it lay a scrap of brown paper. 3 words had been written in pencil. "He still waits." Nora read them twice. She took the note to Mr. Bell. The station master stared at it. Then he crossed the room and locked the front door. "Burn it." "Why?" "Because Red Willow has stayed peaceful by knowing which graves not to dig up." Nora held the scrap tighter. "Is Caleb in danger?" Mr. Bell did not answer. The 5th Friday brought rain again. Caleb arrived at 3:52 with his shoulders dark from the water. There were no flowers this time. He bought his ticket and went outside. The stranger in the tan duster did not appear. Still, Nora checked the freight office twice. At 4:12, the eastbound arrived through heavy rain. A widow stepped down carrying a carpet bag. 2 cowhands climbed aboard. A boy pressed his face against the glass of the last passenger car. Caleb watched them all. Then the train disappeared around the ridge. He remained on the bench as rain dripped from the brim of his hat. Nora thought of the note. She thought of the blue thread. She thought of the blood she had seen on his sleeve the week before. Mr. Bell had warned her not to ask. But Nora had spent too much of her life behind windows while other people carried their grief alone. She closed the ticket drawer. She stepped onto the platform and crossed through the rain. Caleb did not look at her when she sat beside him. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Nora asked the question the whole town had avoided for 3 years. "Who are you waiting for?" Caleb tightened his jaw. Slowly, he reached inside his coat. He took out the old railroad ticket tied with blue thread. "My wife." Nora looked at the empty track. "When is she coming?" Caleb stared toward the bend where the train had vanished. "She is not." Caleb kept his eyes on the empty track. Nora waited for him to say more. Rain struck the station roof. Water ran from the brim of his hat and darkened the shoulders of his coat. The old ticket rested between his fingers. Its edges were soft from years of being folded and opened. What was her name? Abigail. Nora looked at the blue thread tied through the punched hole. Did she use this ticket? Caleb nodded. Every Friday for almost a year. He spoke slowly. Each word seemed chosen before it left him. Her mother lived near Fort Hays. She became ill during the winter of '81. Abigail went to care for her. She came home on the eastbound every Friday evening and returned on Sunday. You met her here? Every week. Caleb looked toward the second bench. She could see me through the window before the train stopped. She said I was always sitting in the same place. Nora glanced at the bench beneath them. This place? This place. For the first time, she understood why Caleb never sat anywhere else. Why did she tie the thread to the ticket? Caleb looked down at it. She tore it from a blue dress. The first Friday she came home, the ticket nearly blew from her hand. She tied the thread through the hole and looped it around her finger after that. A faint warmth entered his voice. She claimed the railroad could lose luggage and cattle and half its passengers. She said it would not lose her ticket. Nora almost smiled. She sounds stubborn. She was. Caleb folded the ticket once. She was also usually right. The smile disappeared from his face. When her mother died, Abigail returned to the ranch. We still came here some Fridays. We would sit on this bench and watch the train. She said this was the first place she understood that someone was waiting for her. Nora felt the words settle between them. How long ago did she die? 3 years. What happened? Fever. His answer came too quickly. Nora noticed. Caleb placed the ticket inside his coat and stood. That is enough for one afternoon. He walked toward his horse. Nora remained on the bench. She watched him ride away through the rain. Something in his final answer troubled her. It was not only grief. It sounded like a door being closed before she could see what stood behind it. When Nora returned to the ticket office, Mr. Bell was waiting. What did he tell you? That his wife died. Mr. Bell looked toward the platform. You should leave it there. Why? Because sorrow becomes dangerous when people mistake it for a question that needs answering. Nora removed her wet coat. Someone left a warning about him. Mr. Bell turned away. That note could have meant nothing. You locked the door when you saw it. He did not answer. Nora sat at the desk and opened the station ledger. The pages listed every train that had entered Red Willow during the past 9 years. Arrival times, departure times, freight weight, passenger counts, weather delays. She found the year Abigail became ill. The records showed the eastbound arriving every Friday at 4:12. Nora searched for Caleb Harrow in the platform ticket column. His name appeared each week in the careful handwriting of the former clerk. Then she found Abigail. The passenger notes listed Mrs. Abigail Harrow on the first Friday of March, then again in April, May, June. The entries continued through summer. One detail stood out. Beside Abigail's name, someone had drawn a small blue circle. The same mark appeared each week. Nora called Mr. Bell to the desk. "What does this mean?" He looked at the circle. Nothing. It was written every time she arrived. Old clerks made private marks. "What kind of mark?" "I do not know." Nora turned another page. The blue circle appeared beside 3 other names. All women. All arrived on the eastbound during the same year. The final name had been crossed out so heavily the paper had almost torn. Who was Clara Vale? Mr. Bell went still. "Close the ledger." Who was she? "Close it, Nora." She held the page open. Did she know Abigail? Mr. Bell reached across the desk and shut the book. His hand trembled. "You have been here 6 weeks. You do not know this town. Then tell me. Some things survive because decent people stop asking questions." Nora stared at him. "And some things survive because frightened people refuse to answer them." Mr. Bell stepped back. His face hardened. "Go home." That night, Nora returned to her room above the general store. She lit one lamp and placed the scrap of brown paper on the table. He still waits. She copied the 4 names marked by blue circles into a small notebook. Abigail Harrow, Clara Vale, Ruth Mercer, Helen Pike. Then Nora remembered the stranger in the tan duster. He had not been watching the train. He had been watching Caleb. The next morning, Nora went to the livery stable before sunrise. The stable boy was sweeping the aisle. "Do you remember the stranger who arrived last Friday?" The boy stopped sweeping. "The one in the tan coat?" "Yes." "He hired a horse." "Where did he go?" "South Road." "Toward the Harrow Ranch?" The boy looked toward the open stable door. "He told me not to say." "Did he give you a name?" The boy shook his head. Then he reached into his pocket and handed Nora a silver coin. "He paid with this." Nora turned it over. One side held an eagle. The other had been scratched with a small blue circle. Behind her, a horse shifted in the shadows. Nora spun around. Caleb stood at the stable entrance. His face showed no surprise, only anger. "Put that coin down." Nora closed her hand around it. "You know what it means?" Caleb stepped inside. "I know enough to tell you to forget you saw it." "Why?" "Because Abigail is dead." His voice became harder. "And the men who helped put her in the ground are not." Nora did not put the coin down. Caleb stood inside the stable with rainwater drying on his coat and anger tightening every line of his face. Who were they? He looked at the silver coin in her hand. Men who believed land belonged to whoever could frighten the owner away. Did they kill Abigail? Caleb took one step closer. "I said enough." "No, you said they helped put her in the ground." The stable boy lowered his head and moved toward the rear stalls. Caleb waited until the boy was out of hearing. 3 years ago, Silas Crow came to Red Willow with money from Eastern cattle investors. He bought weak ranches for half their worth. The owners who refused to sell lost fences, then cattle, then barns. And Abigail found proof? Caleb looked toward the stable doors. She believed Crow was changing land records, moving boundary lines, paying clerks to replace deeds. Did she tell you? Not until the end. Nora closed her fingers around the coin. What happened at the end? Caleb did not answer. The silence told her more than his words. He reached for the coin. "Give it to me." "Why?" "Because the man who carried it knows you have started asking questions." Nora placed the coin in her coat pocket. "Then he should know I am not finished." Caleb stared at her. "That is exactly what Abigail said." For a moment, neither moved. Then hoofbeats sounded outside. A rider passed the stable entrance at a slow pace. Tan duster, dark hat, narrow leather case tied behind the saddle. The stranger turned his head and looked directly at Nora. Then he rode south. Caleb crossed the stable in 3 strides and reached for his horse. "Where are you going?" "Home. He knows the road to your ranch." "That is why I am going." Nora followed him outside. "Wait for the sheriff." Caleb pulled himself into the saddle. Sheriff Danner signed 2 of the deeds, Abigail questioned. "Then who can help you?" Caleb looked down at her. "No one who plans to stay alive." He rode out before she could answer. Nora watched him disappear along the south road. By noon, the sky had turned the color of old iron. Wind carried dust through the station yard. Mr. Bell spent the morning pretending not to notice that Nora kept looking toward the road. At 1:30, a ranch hand came through the station doors. He was young and breathing hard. "Are you Miss Whitfield?" "Yes." "Mr. Harrow sent me." Nora stepped from behind the window. "What happened?" South fence was cut before dawn. 40 had crossed into Crow land. His riders are calling them stolen cattle. Mr. Bell looked up sharply. "Where is Caleb?" "At the boundary line. Crow gave him until sunset to pay for the herd or surrender the south pasture." Nora felt cold despite the heat inside the station. "Did Caleb send a message?" The ranch hand removed a folded scrap from his shirt. "He said you would understand this." Nora opened it. Only 1 sentence had been written. "Do not trust the Friday Ledger." Beneath the words, Caleb had tied a piece of blue thread. Mr. Bell stood so quickly his chair struck the wall. "Where did that come from?" The ranch hand pointed to the scrap. "Mr. Harrow found it tied to the cut fence." Nora looked at Mr. Bell. "You said the blue circles meant nothing." Mr. Bell walked to the front door and turned the lock. The waiting room was empty. The ranch hand shifted uneasily. "I should get back." Mr. Bell grabbed his sleeve. "Did anyone follow you?" The young man looked through the window. "I do not think so." "That means you did not look." Mr. Bell released him. "Go through the freight yard. Do not use the south road." The ranch hand left by the rear door. Nora placed Caleb's note on the counter. "What is the Friday Ledger?" Mr. Bell stared at the blue thread. "Not the book you saw?" "Then what is it?" "A private record kept by the station clerk before me." "Where is it?" "Gone." Nora stepped closer. "Destroyed?" Mr. Bell shook his head. "Missing? Since when?" "Since the week Abigail Harrow died." A board creaked outside. Both of them turned. The stranger in the tan duster stood beyond the glass door. He smiled once. Then he raised one hand and tapped the narrow leather case against the window. Mr. Bell went pale. "Stay away from the door." The stranger placed an envelope beneath the threshold and walked toward the tracks. Nora waited until he vanished behind the freight office. Then she opened the envelope. Inside was a strip of ledger paper marked with 4 blue circles. Below them was 1 sentence. "The 5th woman boards Friday." Nora read it twice. Mr. Bell whispered behind her. "There were only 4. Nora turned. "What does that mean?" The station master looked at her with terror in his eyes. "It means the next name is yours." Nora folded the strip of ledger paper and placed it inside her coat. Mr. Bell watched her as though she had just accepted a death sentence. "You cannot stay here tonight." Nora looked through the station window. The stranger in the tan duster was gone. The tracks lay empty beneath the hard afternoon light. "Where should I go?" "Anywhere Crow does not expect." "That does not answer me." Mr. Bell lowered his voice. "The Harrow Ranch." Nora studied him. "You told me to stay away from Caleb." "I told you to stay away from the past. The past has found you now." He crossed to a cabinet behind the ticket desk and removed an old revolver wrapped in cloth. Nora stared at it. "Can you use that?" "My father taught me." Mr. Bell handed it to her. "Then remember what he taught you." Nora checked the cylinder. 4 chambers were loaded. "Why only 4 rounds?" "Because the last man who carried it used 2. "Who?" the clerk who kept the private ledger. Mr. Bell looked toward the rear door. His name was Samuel Voss. He disappeared 3 days before Abigail died. Nora felt the weight of the revolver in her hand. Did Crow kill him? I never saw a body. That was not my question. Mr. Bell did not answer. A whistle sounded far east of town. The afternoon freight was coming early. Mr. Bell moved to the window and stared down the track. It should not be here for another hour. Nora heard hoofbeats behind the station. 3 riders entered the freight yard. Each wore a blue circle scratched into the silver buckle of his gun belt. Mr. Bell pulled the shade over the window. Go now. Nora slipped the revolver beneath her coat. What about you? I will tell them you boarded the freight. They will not believe you. They do not need to believe me for long. Nora hesitated. Mr. Bell opened the rear door. Find Caleb. Tell him the 5th name was never meant to board a train. It was meant to disappear beside one. Nora stepped into the freight yard. The wind carried coal, smoke, and dust between the storage sheds. She kept low behind stacked crates until she reached the station horse tied near the water tower. A rider shouted from the platform. Nora mounted and drove the horse toward the south road. A gunshot cracked behind her. Wood splintered from the fence post beside her shoulder. She did not look back. The road ran through open grassland for 6 miles before dropping into a dry creek bed. Nora heard the riders following before she saw them. She pushed the horse harder. The animal stumbled once on loose stone but recovered. Another shot passed over her head. Nora reached the creek bed and turned west instead of south. The bank hid her from sight for several seconds. She remembered Caleb leaving the stable. He had taken the south road because it was direct. Crow would expect the same from her. Nora rode beneath the creek bank until she found an old cattle trail climbing toward the Harrow property. By the time she reached the ridge, the sun had fallen low. Below her stretched the south pasture. The fence had been cut in 3 places. Cattle moved in confused groups near the boundary line. 6 armed riders stood on the Crow side. Caleb faced them alone. Silas Crow sat on a black horse at the center. He wore a dark coat and a pale hat. His beard was trimmed close. Nothing about him looked careless. Nora stopped behind a stand of cottonwoods and listened. Those cattle crossed onto my land. Crow's voice carried across the open ground. Because your men cut the fence. Caleb stood beside his chestnut gelding with one hand near his revolver. You cannot prove that. I do not need to. Crow smiled. You do if you want the law to care. Sheriff Danner rode into view from the east. 2 deputies followed him. Caleb looked toward them and understood at once. Danner did not come to help him. Crow dismounted. Sign over the south pasture and I will forget the stolen cattle. Caleb did not move. That land belonged to Abigail before she married me. Then perhaps she should have learned when to surrender it. Caleb drew his revolver. Every rider around Crow raised a weapon. Nora pulled Mr. Bell's revolver from beneath her coat. Sheriff Danner shouted, Lower the gun, Caleb. Crow took one slow step forward. Your wife made the same mistake. Caleb froze. For 3 years you wondered why the fever came so fast. Crow watched him carefully. She was never sick. Caleb moved before anyone could stop him. He struck Crow across the mouth with the revolver. Gunfire erupted. Nora fired from the ridge. One of Crow's riders fell from his saddle. Caleb rolled behind a broken fence post as bullets tore through the grass. The cattle scattered. Sheriff Danner shouted for everyone to stop, but his deputies fired toward Caleb. Nora rode down the slope. Caleb saw her. What are you doing here? Saving you. That was a poor plan. It was the only one I had. She slid from the saddle beside him and handed him the ledger strip. Caleb read the warning. His face changed. Where did you get this? Crow's man left it at the station. Caleb looked toward the riders repositioning behind the cattle. Nora pointed to the blue circles. Mr. Bell said there were 4 women. Caleb stared at the strip. There were 5. Nora felt cold. Who was the 5th? Caleb looked at her. Abigail had a sister. A bullet struck the fence post above them. Caleb pulled Nora lower. She vanished the same week Abigail died. Nora looked toward Silas Crow. Then she may still be alive. Caleb checked his revolver. If she is alive, then she knows what happened. Crow shouted across the pasture. Last chance, Harrow. Caleb rose just enough to aim. No. Crow lifted one hand. The riders spread apart. Behind them, a wagon appeared from the western trail. A woman sat inside with her wrists bound. Blue cloth covered her mouth. Caleb stopped breathing. Nora looked at him. Do you know her? His voice was barely more than air. That is Clara Vale. Clara Vale sat inside the wagon with her wrists bound and blue cloth tied across her mouth. Caleb stared at her as gun smoke drifted over the pasture. For 1 second, the gunfire seemed to disappear. Then a bullet struck the earth beside Nora. Caleb pulled her behind the broken fence. Stay down. Nora looked toward the wagon. You said Clara vanished 3 years ago. She did. Then how is she here? Caleb did not answer. Across the field, Silas Crow raised one hand. His riders stopped firing. The sudden silence felt worse than the gunshots. Crow wiped blood from his mouth where Caleb had struck him. Now we can speak like reasonable men. Caleb rose behind the fence with his revolver ready. You have never been reasonable. Crow smiled. Neither was Abigail. Clara twisted inside the wagon. One of Crow's riders struck the sideboard with his rifle. She went still. Caleb tightened his grip on the revolver. Let her go. Sign over the south pasture. No. Then Clara dies before sunset. Nora watched the riders. Sheriff Danner and his deputies remained on the eastern side of the boundary. They had lowered their weapons, but they did not leave. Crow glanced toward them. Sheriff. Danner touched the brim of his hat. You heard him, Harrow. Those cattle crossed the line. Crow has a lawful claim. Lawful? Caleb looked at the cut fence. You brought deputies to help a thief steal land. Danner shrugged. I came to prevent violence. Nora stepped beside Caleb. You fired at us. Danner looked at her for the first time. Miss Whitfield, you should have stayed at the station. Why? Because women who ask questions in Red Willow have a habit of disappearing? Crow's smile vanished. Nora saw it. The words had reached him. She removed the strip of ledger paper from her coat and held it where he could see. 4 blue circles and 1 warning. Crow studied the paper. Where did you get that? At the station. Mr. Bell should have burned it. Caleb glanced at Nora. You did not tell me Bell knew. I did not know how much he knew. Crow looked toward the road behind them. Where is Bell now? Nora understood too late. The riders who had followed her were not all in the pasture. She turned toward the distant line of smoke above Red Willow. A dark column rose beyond the ridge. The station. Crow smiled again. Your curiosity has consequences. Nora felt the weight of those words. Mr. Bell had stayed behind to give her time. Now the station was burning. Caleb saw her face. Do not look back. He is still there. We do not know that. I left him there. You came because I sent for you. No, you sent a warning. Nora looked at the wagon. And I brought danger with me. Caleb grabbed her arm. Crow brought the danger. But Clara heard Nora. Her eyes fixed on the blue thread tied to the ledger strip. She began kicking the wagon floor. The driver cursed and pulled the reins. Clara kicked again. Then the wagon lurched. One rear wheel dropped into a shallow washout hidden by grass. The axle cracked. The wagon tipped hard to one side. Clara fell against the boards. Caleb moved. He ran low through the scattered cattle. Nora fired twice toward the nearest riders. One horse reared. The rider lost his aim. Caleb reached the wagon and shot the rope holding the rear gate. Clara rolled onto the ground. Crow shouted, "Take Harrow alive." His riders closed in. Caleb cut the rope around Clara's wrists. "Can you ride?" Clara tore the blue cloth from her mouth. "You took long enough." Caleb froze. The voice belonged to someone he had once known. Nora reached them and pulled Clara behind the overturned wagon. "Who kept you?" Clara looked at Crow. "Not him." Nora followed her gaze. Sheriff Danner had drawn his revolver. Clara pointed at him. "That man." Danner fired. The bullet struck the wagon board inches from her head. Caleb returned fire. Danner dropped behind his horse. Crow shouted at the sheriff. "You said she would never speak." Danner shouted back. "She was not supposed to be here." The two men looked at each other. For the first time, Nora saw the alliance crack. Clara grabbed Caleb's coat. "Listen to me. What happened to Abigail?" Clara's face changed. Grief and fear rose together. She found the original deeds. "Where are they?" "I hid them." "Where?" Clara looked toward the station smoke. "In the Friday ledger." Nora felt her stomach drop. "The private ledger is at the station?" "Behind the timetable wall." Caleb looked at the fire. Crow sent men to destroy it. Clara shook her head. "No." She looked at Nora. "He sent them to find it." Nora understood. The station was not burning to erase evidence. It was burning to force Mr. Bell out of hiding. Caleb helped Clara stand. "We go now." Crow stepped from behind the cattle with his revolver raised. "No one goes anywhere." Clara stared at him. "You still do not know what Abigail wrote on the last page." Crow stopped. "What did she write?" Clara smiled without warmth. "The name of the man who paid you." Behind Crow, Sheriff Danner slowly raised his revolver. This time he aimed it at Crow's back. Sheriff Danner held his revolver behind Silas Crow. For one breath, nobody moved. Then Crow turned. Danner fired first. The bullet struck Crow high in the shoulder and spun him into the grass. Crow's riders shouted. Some aimed at Danner. Others aimed at Caleb. The alliance broke apart in an instant. Caleb pushed Nora and Clara behind the overturned wagon. "Get down!" Gunfire rolled across the pasture. Danner's deputies fired at Crow's men. One deputy fell beside his horse. The cattle scattered through the broken fence and filled the field with dust. Clara grabbed Caleb's sleeve. "We need the ledger." Caleb looked toward Red Willow. The smoke above the station had thickened. Nora checked the revolver Mr. Bell had given her. Only one round remained. "How do we reach town?" Clara pointed toward the dry creek bed west of the pasture. "There is an old wagon trail beyond the ridge." Caleb looked at Crow. He was still alive. One of his riders dragged him behind a dead horse. Danner shouted orders from the eastern fence. Caleb understood what would happen next. Whoever won the pasture would ride for the station. He helped Clara onto Nora's horse. Nora climbed behind her. Caleb mounted his chestnut gelding. "Follow the creek." They rode west while the gunfight continued behind them. The dry creek hid them from the pasture. Clara leaned forward in the saddle and held the mane with both hands. Nora could feel her shaking. Did Abigail hide the deeds herself? Clara looked ahead. She hid the originals inside the private ledger. Why there? Because Samuel Voss kept records Crow could not change. The missing clerk? Clara nodded. Samuel knew Crow was bribing county clerks. He copied every false deed number and every payment. What happened to him? Danner arrested him before he could leave town. For what crime? There was no crime. Clara's voice hardened. Danner kept him beneath the old jail for 3 days. Then Crow's men took him away. Did Abigail see it? She saw the wagon leave at night. Nora looked at Clara. Then Abigail began investigating. She found Samuel alive in an abandoned line shack. He gave her the ledger and told her where the original deeds were kept. Caleb rode beside them. Why did she never tell me? Clara looked at him. Because she knew what you would do. What would I do? You would have gone after Crow with a gun. Caleb said nothing. Clara continued. Abigail wanted proof strong enough to bring federal marshals, not another grave. The words struck Caleb harder than the gunfire behind them. Nora watched his face. For 3 years, he had believed his wife died before she could trust him with the truth. Now he understood that she had hidden it because she knew him too well. They reached the ridge above Red Willow. Flames burned through the freight office roof. Smoke poured from the station windows. People formed a bucket line from the water tower. Nora searched for Mr. Bell. She did not see him. They rode down the hill. A burning beam collapsed inside the station. The waiting room windows shattered. Nora jumped from the horse before it stopped. Mr. Bell. Caleb caught her arm. You cannot go inside. He may be trapped. Another section of roof fell. Clara pointed toward the eastern wall. The timetable board. The private ledger is behind it. Caleb looked at the flames. How do we reach it? A weak voice came from beside the loading platform. Nora. Mr. Bell lay behind a water barrel. Blood covered one side of his shirt. Nora ran to him. Who shot you? The man in the tan duster. Where is he? Inside. Mr. Bell struggled to breathe. He is tearing down the wall. Caleb drew his revolver. How many men? 2. Nora pressed her hand against Mr. Bell's wound. Clara knelt beside him. The last page. Mr. Bell looked at her. You know? Abigail told me. His eyes moved toward the burning station. They cannot read it. Nora leaned closer. Why not? Because Abigail wrote it in the ticket code. Clara looked at Nora. Railroad punch marks. Mr. Bell nodded. Only a trained clerk can understand them. Nora realized why the 5th warning had named her. Crow did not only fear what she might discover. He needed her to read what Abigail had left behind. A gunshot sounded inside the station. Caleb moved toward the door. Nora stood. I am going with you. You have 1 bullet. Then I will not waste it. Clara took Mr. Bell's revolver from the ground. She checked the cylinder. Empty. Caleb looked at both women. Stay behind me. They entered through the freight room. Smoke covered the ceiling. Flames crawled along the western wall. Beyond the ticket office, the stranger in the tan duster pulled the timetable board from its frame. A second man stood beside him with a shotgun. The stranger saw Nora. His smile returned. Good. We found the clerk. He held up a black leather ledger. Now you are going to read the final page. Caleb raised his revolver. The shotgun man turned toward him. The stranger opened the ledger and showed Nora the last sheet. It was covered in punched circles and short blue threads. At the bottom was one handwritten name. Caleb Harrow. Caleb stared at his own name on the final page. The stranger in the tan duster smiled through the smoke. You understand now. Nora looked at the punched circles and blue threads. The pattern did not accuse Caleb. It recorded a journey. She stepped closer. The first mark meant a passenger boarded under another name. The second showed freight transferred without inspection. The third marked a payment made outside the railroad office. The shotgun man shifted his aim toward her. Keep reading. Nora studied the final row. The smoke burned her eyes. Flames climbed the wall behind the ticket window. The ledger shook in the stranger's hand. This last mark means the passenger never reached the destination written on the ticket. Caleb looked at Abigail's name above his own. What does my name mean? Nora traced the line with one finger. Your name was not written as the passenger. She looked at him. You were the destination. Caleb said nothing. The stranger frowned. That is not what Crow told us. Nora read the marks again. Abigail planned to send the deeds to Caleb. She used a false passenger name. She hid the papers inside freight. The package was supposed to leave the train at Red Willow. Clara stood behind Caleb, but it never arrived. Nora nodded. Someone removed it before the train reached town. The stranger tightened his grip on the ledger. Who? Nora looked at the final punch. The mark belonged to a station west of Red Willow. Mr. Bell had taught her the code during her first week. Each station used a different shape for freight transfers. Fort Hayes. Caleb turned toward Clara. Your mother lived near Fort Hayes. Clara looked at the floor. She did. Something in her voice made Nora stop. Caleb heard it too. What have you not told me? Clara closed her eyes. Abigail did not travel there only to care for our mother. Caleb stared at her. Then why did she go? Clara looked toward the burning wall. She was meeting Samuel Voss, the missing clerk. He had found the original deeds. Abigail helped him copy the payment records. Every Friday she carried another piece of evidence back toward Red Willow. Why did she hide that from me? Because Crow had someone inside your ranch. Caleb went still. Who? Clara looked at him with grief in her face. Your foreman. Caleb shook his head. Elias Ward worked for my father. He also worked for Silas Crow. The shotgun man laughed. Old Elias was paid better than most honest men. Caleb raised his revolver toward him. Say his name again. The stranger lifted the ledger. Shoot him, and this burns. Caleb held his aim. Nora watched his hand. The barrel remained steady. His eyes did not. Clara continued. Elias read your mail. He counted your cattle. He told Crow when Abigail traveled, and when you left the ranch. Caleb remembered every evening Elias had sat at his table, every report he had trusted, every fence line the man had claimed was secure. Where is he now? Clara looked at the name written on the page. He died the same winter as Abigail. Caleb remembered the burial, a fall from a horse during a storm. No witnesses. Crow killed him? Clara shook her head. Abigail did. The words seemed to empty the room. Caleb lowered the revolver. No. Clara stepped toward him. Elias followed her from the station. He tried to take the deeds. She fought him near the creek crossing. He pulled a knife. She fired once. Caleb looked at Clara as though he no longer knew where he stood. Why did she not tell me? She came home covered in rain and blood. She believed Crow would kill you if you knew. She asked me to help hide the body until the marshals arrived. The marshals never came. No. Clara's voice broke. Danner found us first. Nora understood the blue circles beside the names. They were not victims chosen at random. They were women who had carried pieces of the evidence. Abigail, Clara, Ruth Mercer, Helen Pike. What happened to Ruth and Helen? Clara looked toward the flames. Ruth escaped east. Helen did not. The shotgun man raised his weapon toward Clara. That is enough. Nora saw his finger tighten. She fired her final round. The bullet struck the shotgun barrel and threw it aside. Caleb fired next. The man fell backward into the burning wall. The stranger dropped the ledger and reached for his revolver. Clara struck him across the face with an iron ticket stamp. He collapsed beside the desk. Caleb grabbed the ledger before the flames reached it. The ceiling groaned above them. Nora pulled Clara toward the freight door. Move. They carried Mr. Bell into the station yard as the roof collapsed behind them. The townspeople scattered from the falling sparks. Caleb stood in the street with the black ledger pressed against his chest. He looked at Clara. For 3 years, I believed Abigail died of fever. Clara lowered her eyes. She did not. How did she die? Clara looked toward the south road. Crow did not poison her. Then who did? Clara met Caleb's eyes. Sheriff Danner. Caleb looked toward the south road. Sheriff Danner had disappeared from the pasture before the station fire began. Clara held one arm against her ribs and watched the smoke rise behind the town. He found Abigail near the creek crossing. Caleb kept the ledger pressed against his chest. How do you know? Because I was there. Nora turned toward her. You said Danner found both of you. He did. Clara's voice weakened. Abigail had already shot Elias. We were trying to move the deeds before Crow could reach them. Danner arrived alone. He said he would protect us. Caleb stared at her. And you trusted him? He wore a badge. Clara looked toward the burned station. At the time, that still meant something. Mr. Bell lay nearby beneath a blanket while 2 townspeople treated his wound. His breathing was shallow but steady. Nora knelt beside the black ledger and opened the final pages. The punched marks were clearer in daylight. Each line recorded a transfer, a false name, a payment, a destination that had been changed. Clara pointed toward one row. That was the night Abigail died. Nora followed the marks. A passenger left Fort Hays under a false name. A package traveled separately inside a freight crate. The package was removed before Red Willow. Then, one final symbol appeared beside Sheriff Danner's name. Nora had seen that symbol before. It was used when railroad property was surrendered to local law. Danner took the package from the train. Caleb's voice was flat. Yes. Clara lowered her eyes. He told Abigail Crow already knew about the evidence. He offered to hide the deeds inside the jail until federal marshals came. But there were no marshals. No. What did Abigail do? She refused to give him the ledger. Clara looked at Caleb. Danner drew his gun. Abigail reached for hers. He shot her below the ribs. Caleb did not move. The sound of buckets, horses, burning wood, all of it seemed to fade around him. Nora watched the grief return to his face, not the quiet grief of a man who had lived with loss. This was new, sharp, violent. Where did she die? At the ranch. Clara spoke carefully. I got her home before dawn. She made me promise not to tell you the truth until the deeds were safe. Caleb looked at the ledger. She lived 12 days. She was not dying from fever. Clara shook her head. The wound turned bad. Why did no one tell me? Because Abigail believed you would kill Danner before the evidence reached anyone who could use it. Caleb looked toward the road. She was right. Nora stood between him and his horse. Then do not prove her right now. Move. No. He looked at her. Danner murdered my wife. And he wants you angry. Nora held his gaze. He wants you riding after him alone. He wants one clean shot and one dead rancher, blamed for attacking the sheriff. Caleb's hand tightened around the ledger. Clara stepped closer. Abigail did not protect you for 3 years so you could throw your life away in 1 hour. Caleb looked at her. You kept this from me. I did. Why? Because she asked me to. That answer hurt him more than an excuse would have. A rider came hard from the North Road. He slowed near the station ruins. Federal Marshal. The man wore a long gray coat and carried a sealed leather pouch. He dismounted. Which one of you is Nora Whitfield? Nora stepped forward. I am. He handed her a folded letter. This was wired from Salina Junction. They are offering you the head clerk's position. Better salary. Housing included. Train leaves east tomorrow morning. Caleb looked at her. You were planning to leave? I had not answered. The marshal glanced at the burned station. "You may want to now." Nora opened the letter. For months she had believed the offer represented safety, a clean room, a better wage, a town where no one knew the names Abigail Harrow or Silas Crow. Then the marshal noticed the ledger. "Where did you get that?" Nora held it close. "Why?" "Because I have been hunting those deed numbers for 2 years." He opened the leather pouch and showed them copies of federal land claims. Every claim listed inside Abigail's ledger matched a complaint filed across 3 counties. Caleb looked toward the South Road. "Can you arrest Danner?" "With the ledger and a living witness." The marshal looked at Clara. "Yes." Clara shook her head. "Danner will not wait." A church bell began ringing from the center of town. 3 slow strikes. Then 3 more. Mr. Bell opened his eyes beneath the blanket. "That is the jail alarm." Nora turned toward the street. Why would Danner return to town? Mr. Bell struggled to speak. "He keeps the county deed seals beneath the jail floor." The marshal reached for his rifle. "If he burns those seals, the ledger becomes harder to prove." Caleb mounted his horse. This time, Nora did not stop him. She folded the Selena letter and placed it inside her coat. "The eastbound leaves tomorrow." Caleb looked down at her. "Will you be on it?" Nora climbed onto the station horse. "First we finish this." They rode toward the jail as smoke began rising from the center of Red Willow. Word, count 789. The jail bell kept ringing as Caleb, Nora, Clara, and the federal marshal rode into the center of Red Willow. Smoke rolled from the rear windows of the sheriff's office. Townspeople had gathered across the street, but none moved closer. Sheriff Danner stood on the jail steps with a rifle in one hand and a metal deed box in the other. 2 deputies flanked him. Silas Crow stood behind them with his wounded shoulder wrapped beneath a dark coat. Caleb pulled his horse to a stop. "You shot him in the pasture." Danner looked at Crow. "Not well enough." Crow smiled through the pain. "You always were a poor shot when money was involved." The marshal dismounted and raised his rifle. "Sheriff Danner, put down the weapon and step away from the box." Danner looked at the federal badge. "You are outside your authority." The marshal held up a sealed warrant. "Not anymore." Crow took 1 slow step away from Danner. The sheriff turned his rifle toward him. "Stay where you are." Crow stopped. Caleb understood at once. The partnership between them was finished. Now each man feared what the other might say. Nora held the black ledger beneath her coat. Clara stayed close beside her. The deed box on the steps glowed from the heat behind the sheriff's office. Danner had not burned it yet. He wanted a way out. The marshal spoke again. "Open the box." Danner laughed. "You think paper can save this town?" "No." The marshal kept his rifle steady. "But it can hang the men who stole it." Crow looked toward Nora. "The ledger. Give it to me and I will tell the marshal everything." Danner turned his rifle toward Crow. "You will tell no one." Crow raised both hands. "You need me alive." Danner fired. Caleb moved at the same instant. His bullet struck Danner's rifle and threw the shot wide. Crow dropped behind the jail steps. The deputies opened fire. The marshal pulled Clara behind a water trough. Nora ran toward the hitching rail as bullets tore splinters from the posts. Caleb fired twice and forced 1 deputy behind a wagon. The second deputy aimed at Nora. Clara saw him first. "Nora." Nora dropped. The shot passed above her head. The marshal fired and the deputy fell against the jail wall. Danner grabbed the deed box and backed through the office door. Smoke swallowed him. Crow crawled toward the alley. Caleb saw him. "Do not move." Crow froze. "You want Danner." Caleb kept his revolver trained on him. "I want the truth." "Then let me live long enough to give it." Clara stepped from behind the trough. "Tell him who ordered Abigail killed." Crow looked at her. Danner pulled the trigger. Who ordered it? Crow smiled faintly. A man who never came to Red Willow. Nora looked at the ledger. The name on the final page. Crow watched her. Now you understand why Caleb Harrow was written there. Caleb looked at Nora. You said I was the destination. You were. Nora opened the ledger. But the final marks did not end with you. She turned the page toward the marshal. A second line had been hidden beneath a strip of blue thread. The marshal read the name aloud. Edwin Harrow. Caleb went still. My father. Crow laughed once. The old man borrowed money from Eastern investors. When he could not repay it, he offered land records instead. Abigail found out. Caleb stared at him. My father died 6 years ago. The agreement did not. Crow looked toward the burning sheriff office. Danner inherited the payments. I inherited the work. Clara stepped closer. Abigail knew Caleb's father began the theft. Yes. Why did she protect Caleb from that? Because she loved him. Crow looked directly at Caleb. And because she knew shame would make you reckless. The words struck deeper than the revelation. Caleb thought of the ranch, the fences, the house, every acre his father had left him. Some of it had been built on stolen ground. Behind them, the jail door burst open. Danner staggered into the street, carrying the deed box. His coat burned at one sleeve. The marshal aimed. Drop it. Danner held the box against his chest. The ledger proves nothing without these seals. Nora stepped forward. Then give them to the court. Danner looked at her. You should have taken the Selena train. He raised his revolver. Caleb aimed at Danner's heart. For 3 years, he had imagined the man responsible for Abigail's death. Now that man stood 20 feet away. One shot would end it. Clara looked at Caleb. She wanted proof, not another grave. Danner fired. Caleb pulled Nora aside. The bullet struck the ledger and tore through the outer cover. The marshal shot Danner in the leg. Danner fell from the steps and dropped the deed box. Caleb reached him first. Danner looked up from the dirt. Do it. Caleb pressed the revolver against his chest. Danner smiled. Prove your wife knew you. Caleb held the weapon there. Then he lowered it. No. Danner's smile vanished. Caleb stepped back. You will live long enough to hear every name you buried read aloud in court. The marshal pulled Danner's hands behind him and locked iron cuffs around his wrists. Crow tried to slip into the alley. Nora pointed at him. Marshal. Crow stopped. The marshal looked toward Caleb. Your choice. Caleb looked at the burned ledger, the deed box, Clara, Nora. Then he looked at Crow. Take him alive. The marshal bound Crow's hands. The church bell stopped ringing. Only the fire remained. Nora opened the damaged ledger. The bullet had torn through the final page. But the name beneath the blue thread was still visible. Edwin Harrow. Caleb looked at it for a long time. Then Nora asked the question he feared most. What will you do with the ranch? Caleb looked toward the southern horizon. First, I find out who it truly belongs to. 3 months later, the federal court returned the stolen land to the families whose names had been erased from the county records. Silas Crow received 20 years in prison for fraud, intimidation, and conspiracy. Sheriff Danner was sentenced for murder, kidnapping, and the destruction of federal evidence. He never looked at Caleb during the hearing. Clara Vale testified for 2 full days. She gave every name she remembered. She described the women who had carried evidence beneath their coats. She described Samuel Voss and the night he disappeared. Then she told the court how Abigail Harrow had kept moving even after Danner shot her. Abigail had known she was dying. She had still protected the ledger. She had still returned to Caleb. The truth did not restore the years Caleb had lost. It did not bring Abigail back. But it gave her death its proper name. She had not been taken by fever. She had been murdered because she refused to let powerful men steal from people who could not fight them alone. When the hearing ended, Caleb returned to Red Willow with Nora and Clara. The Harrow Ranch no longer belonged entirely to him. 7 families held lawful claims to different sections. Caleb could have fought them. Instead, he invited every claimant to the ranch house. They gathered around the long dining table Abigail had once organized. Caleb placed the recovered deeds before them. "My father stole what was yours. I cannot change what he did, but I can return what remains." One elderly rancher studied him. "And what will remain for you?" Caleb looked through the window toward the south pasture. "Enough." Over the next month, the fences were moved. Markers were replaced. Families who had lost their homes returned to their land. Caleb kept the central ranch house and 120 acres. It was far less than he had inherited. It was the first part of the ranch that truly belonged to him. Clara stayed until the work was finished. Then she prepared to leave for New Mexico, where Ruth Mercer was believed to be living. Caleb met her at the station. They stood beside the second bench. "Why did Abigail never tell me about you?" Clara looked toward the tracks. She believed silence would keep everyone alive. "Did it?" "No." Clara touched the blue scarf around her neck. "But she made the best choice she could with the danger she understood." Caleb nodded slowly. "Will you come back?" Clara looked at him. "Do you want me to?" "You are the last person who remembers her before the ranch." "Then I will come back." The eastbound arrived at 4:12. Clara boarded. Caleb watched the train leave. But he did not remain alone on the bench. Nora stood beside the ticket window. The Selena letter was still folded inside her desk. She had never answered it. Caleb crossed the platform toward her. The station had been repaired with new boards and fresh cedar siding. Only the second bench remained unchanged. Nora closed the ticket drawer. "You came without flowers. I brought something else." Caleb removed Abigail's old ticket from his coat. The blue thread remained tied through the punched hole. Nora looked at it. "What will you do with it?" Caleb turned toward the bench. "For 3 years I carried it because I believed it was the last thing connecting me to her. And now? Now I know she is in more than this ticket. She is in the land she returned, in the names she protected, in the choices she forced me to make." Nora walked beside him to the second bench. Caleb placed the ticket on the wooden seat. A small bunch of wildflowers rested beside it. He had gathered them from the south fence where Abigail once planted seeds. He sat for several moments. The afternoon wind moved the blue thread. Then Caleb stood. He did not put the ticket back into his coat. Nora looked at him. "Are you ready to leave it?" "No." She waited. "But I am ready to stop carrying it alone." He held out his hand. Nora took it. They walked away from the platform before the next train arrived. Caleb returned the following Friday. Not to wait for Abigail. He came to meet Nora after her shift. They rode to the ranch together. Nora began helping him rebuild the accounts. She learned Abigail's kitchen. She did not move every jar or replace every curtain. She changed only what needed changing. In spring, she found the garden growing beneath the north wall. Some plants had survived years without care. Others had disappeared. Nora knelt beside the empty patches. What grew here? Caleb looked at the soil. I do not remember. Then we plant something new. He watched her press seeds into the earth. For the first time, the idea did not feel like betrayal. It felt like continuation. They married in September at Red Willow Station. Mr. Bell stood beside the ticket window with one arm still stiff from his wound. Clara returned from New Mexico with Ruth Mercer. The families whose land had been restored filled the platform. Caleb wore the same black hat he had worn every Friday. Nora wore a simple blue dress. After the ceremony, they sat on the second bench, The eastbound appeared beyond the ridge. Caleb watched it approach. For one brief moment, he remembered Abigail running the final distance toward him because walking had felt too slow. The memory no longer wounded him. It warmed him. Nora placed her hand over his. She knew you would keep showing up. Caleb watched the train enter the station. Yes, she did. The locomotive departed. Its smoke faded over the prairie. Caleb and Nora remained until the rails stopped humming. Then they rose and walked home together. The old ticket stayed inside a glass frame at the station. The blue thread was still tied through it. Beneath the frame, Mr. Bell placed a small handwritten card. For those who kept showing up without any guarantee. And every Friday when travelers asked about the ticket, Nora told them only this. It belonged to a woman who refused to let the truth disappear. Would you have chosen justice like Caleb or revenge against the man who murdered Abigail?